everyone, I'm Lena von Fritschen. Welcome to the Freight Perspectives monthly podcast. This is in fact our very first episode, so we are very excited and please bear with us. As some of you probably know from our Substack, we dive into the European road freight market, analyze market developments through data to bring more transparency to essentially all topics around freight procurement. That means we look at what numbers show us to help you make better decisions, whether you're a shipper, carrier, or just curious. And as always, I'm here with Christian Dolderer, our road freight expert who has years of experience in the field. And today we're talking about timing in the spot market, which is pretty interesting. So let's jump right in. So Christian, we noticed something interesting in the data. When companies book spot freight 4 to 6 days roughly ahead, they save about 6.2% on rates. So what's going on that makes this possible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And what's going on is that we need to understand how our customers are, how the market is using spot as a solution. So basically, spot is being used as a very short-term solution, meaning often it is just asking for a quotation today for loading tomorrow. And this is what we have analyzed. And in the chart, which is visible here, you can see that when loading, for instance, 4 to 6 days in advance, there's an optimum reached regarding the price to be paid at the end. So it's roughly 6% lower than loading today, asking the spot market today and loading tomorrow. So that's due to the nature of the market. So it's a structural thing.
And what do you think of specific routes? So, for instance, the Germany to Poland and vice versa corridor, it really stands out here compared to others we discovered. So, can you explain why some of or specific routes behave differently in that regard?
Well, the shown analysis was just a European picture. And of course, I mean, Europe, it's not just one country. Within Europe, we have completely different countries, we have different markets, and in that respect also the imbalance has taken huge effect on the market, and exactly that is the case. So speaking about the traffic in between Germany and Poland, then we have a lot of traffic going from Poland to Germany, but on the other side, towards the end of the week, then a lot of trucks heading back to Eastern Europe for their home bases, for extended rest period. And this is exactly what is also visible within the data, that, for instance, even though you are asking just 1 day in advance for spot quote from Germany to Poland, you end up with a lower price than 3 or 4 days in advance. So it's completely the opposite direction. And that is what makes it interesting also to be active on the market, because it's not a universal picture. It means that all the time you also need to take care about specifics of country combinations, and especially imbalances are very important.
Okay, so with these savings from booking ahead, so the 4 to 6 days we discovered, so the knowledge that you have a competitive edge in waiting those days, how would you suggest then shippers split their freight between spot and contracted rates? Because that's one of the key questions a lot of shippers ask themselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's very close to a $1 million question, because what
Indeed.
is the optimum at the end? Yeah, and unfortunately, there is no easy answer, because there is no optimum or overall optimum fitting each and every company. It could range from some 20% spot market to almost nothing on spot market, depending on the organization of the company, depending on the network of the company. So it's really difficult to answer. But one key point is there, that it completely makes sense to bet on both solutions, so contracted and spot, because if capacity is getting tight, what we need to expect, especially in the next months and years, having contingency plan in place makes a difference. And that's why companies should really think of using both solutions, just in order to be familiar with the processes, and at the end to have a solution ready to step in if it's getting complicated.
Okay, so it depends really what kind of spot we're talking about. So when it comes to very urgent, let's say, spot bookings, so we've seen last minute spot bookings can be really expensive, like 21 or even more % above. So what should shippers do to avoid these very urgent situations, if they can at all?
Yeah. And I think, let's face it, there are situations where there is no solution. That the transport needs to be done no matter what it costs, more or less. But in many times, it's also possible that maybe it just waited for some hours, for some days, maybe. And these are the situations which should be neglected somehow, meaning that planning accuracy really makes a difference, and that all parties involved in the process of dispatching, of asking the spot market, etc., that they really act together to reduce those situations where those very urgent spot calls are needed in order to, at the end, save money.
And at the end of the day, it's always a forecasting questions, how well you can do that as well in advance, and then plan ahead, of course. So if you had to give 3 practical tips for shippers to improve their freight buying strategy, what would they be?
Well, there will be firstly planning accuracy and also forecast accuracy in that respect. Then it would be that that transportation shouldn't be seen as a commodity. It should be more unified approach and a key component within the supply chains. And last but not least, it is transparency. So being active on the market, understanding market movements, that will be the key advices we can give from our side.
Great. Thank you, Christian. So that wraps up our first Freight Perspectives episode. Thanks again for the insights. Find the link to our Substack within this post. Reach out if you have questions. You can subscribe, of course, for more data-driven freight analysis. See you next time.